Well, sunshine. Oh, we got some of that nasty white stuff on the ground. Let's walk out here at Salt Shed. I want to talk to you guys. We're gonna have a little bit different video again. It seems like I've been doing that a lot lately. Probably even do this on a cell phone, so I'm sorry about the audio. It probably won't be as good as one with my detachable mic, but I'm gonna do something quick and dirty. Yesterday we had I released a video yesterday about the Strato saw, and there were some questions on it, and I love them. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a quick video to go in between them before we get the results out. I did that video, oh shucks, a month and a half ago. It takes me a while to get them ready, and then I don't dump them all the same day either, so I got to string them out, or YouTube hates me and quit showing me around. I say that to say this here video is going to be another one that didn't get edited much, and hopefully it don't, if I can keep from getting tongue-tied. I'm missing my eye teeth. I can't see what I'm saying anymore. Anyhow, let's walk out here to the saw shed, and we'll get set up and we'll get started. I got my old feed sack under my arm. I got some stuff scribbled on there. Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, the dogs is happy and I'm happy, and here's my old saw shed. It ain't nothing to write home about. Now, you guys hear me talking about all the time that it's the same temperature inside as it is outside. Well, the wind temperature is about the same too, to be honest about it. You can see my floor. There's where the snow blew in out of the east. Let's get you guys set up over here and we'll get started. I got to clean the bench off. Be back with you here in just a minute. Hey, okay, I got you precariously perched out here on the saw shed. It's going to be a little bit different. Ain't gonna be able to see me much, so that's probably gonna make it better for a lot of y'all. I'm gonna just tilt you straight down. I want to show you. I got some stuff drew out here. Don't get too upset about my my drawing abilities or lack thereof. Okay. Now what we've got here is a picture of a cylinder with no piston in it, essentially, right? We got our exhaust port here. We got Strato port here, and we got intake port here. We won't use that Strato port all the time. We're going to start off with a regular engine. I'm going to tell you a couple of things. I'm going to be working with PSI-G, which is PSI gauge, which means in the atmosphere right now, right out here in my grubby hands, it'd say 14, or it'd say 0.0. Now, PSI actual will claim as 14.7, or atmospheric pressure. We're not going to use that. I got off into the weeds a little bit in the comments the other day on that, and I think I confused some people, and I'm sorry about that. But I was trying to show a little bit of a difference. We're going to use the word strato, okay? Because that's what everybody knows. Don't let words bother you guys. There's no saying, baffle them with bullshit or whatever. And that's what a lot of people do with words. Especially when they're, and I should say this, the smarter a person is, the smaller words they can explain stuff in. And I'm not trying to claim I'm smart. I'm not. I'm not dumb either. I'm ignorant to a lot of things. Ignorant's not a bad thing. Ignorant just means you don't know a certain thing. Doesn't mean you're dumb. It means you're ignorant of a certain subject. I'm ignorant of a lot of stuff, and I say that all the time. I'm ignorant. It doesn't mean I'm dumb. And I'm going to admit to not being dumb on this one particular video, and then we're going to go right back to it. I'm going to deny it from here on out. I'm dumb. But anyhow, strato comes from like stratosphere. That's your layers on the sphere on the earth, right? But strato or stratify means to layer. That's all it means. It's layered. Your ground's stratified. You got topsoil, and you may have clay, then you may have rock. If you drink one of them B-52 bombers at the bar, I don't know, it's got Kahlua or something in there and alcohol, and it's got about 3 different layers. That drink's stratified, right? That's all we need to know. It's layered. So the strato part, don't let that bother you. If it helps you, think of it as layered. That's all it is. Now back down here. I just wanted to get those two things out of the way. PSI, we're going to be working with PSI gauge, which means anything less than what I've got in my hands right here, we're going to call that a vacuum. So if you pull a vacuum, we'll say it's a negative pressure. We'll get that out of the way right quick. Now this is cylinder, and here in a little bit, what it is not well, but it's kind of emulating this Husqvarna cylinder, right? We got a transfer coming up here. Now the ports are never blocked by the piston like they'll look on here, but just suffice it to say I did the best I could do. There's your transfer ports right here, right? And there's a cover that goes over them, but there's your transfer ports, and they're right into the cylinder right here. They just go in there just big as you please. If I had something small enough to poke in there, there's where they go in. Now we got us a piston here, and it's got ports on it, but right now I just want you to understand this. Here's my emulation of a transfer. This is the exhaust, this is the intake, and here after a bit, that'll be the Stratos. But right now, it's not even going to be the Stratos, because we ain't got Stratos. On a cardboard piston, you ain't got Stratos. Let's see what we can do here. We don't need that. We don't need that. We need this. And this. We're going to put our Ozama carburetor on there, right? And so now we don't have Stratos, right? We got a Ozama carburetor on here. If you like a Walboro, run a Walboro. If you like a Tillotson, run a Tillotson. Now we're going to put our piston here under. I'm starting off remedial, guys, but I'm not trying to talk down to anybody. Believe me. So we're going to put our piston in there at bottom dead center, okay? It's got our intake port closed off, and it's got our exhaust port wide open. We're at bottom dead center, right? Now, as this starts moving up, we're sealed here. Nothing can get in here. We're gonna claim all this as perfection, and there's no leak bias. So we've got this volume right here, which is the same as outside. We're just starting this engine. Right now, this volume inside this engine, up here, everywhere is the same as it is outside. It's all 0. Now, as this starts moving up, we're creating a void here, right? And we're starting to close off that. We're starting to close off that exhaust. Right there, the exhaust is closed, but the intake's not open. And we just changed that void from this much down here to there. Nothing else leaked in there, so our pressure has dropped. We'll say let's say -5, just for argument's sake. -5. We got 5 psi. A vacuum. I know that's not proper, but let's use that term for now. We got a -5 psi here. So we've got a vacuum. Now, as that piston comes on up a little bit more, now we break this, guys, and we've got 14 pounds of pressure out here, and we'll say we made it up to -6 in here right before that broke. So there's a 8.7 psid. PSI differential means there's more pressure out here than here. So that just pushes that air fuel mix, or draws it in there. Depends on how you want to look at it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you want to wrap your head around it. It's like digging a hole in the water. Okay, if you can see it fast enough, the air is just like water. It's fluid dynamics, all it is. You dig you a hole in the water and throw that over your shoulder, well, that hole went away. You can't even see that hole because it got filled right back in, right? That's because that pressure just filled that right back in, just as faster than diarrhea. So, but if you could slow that down and you took you a shovel full of water for just a second, you did have a hole, and you had a vacuum right there. For just a millisecond, you had a hole in that water until that water went in there and filled that up, right? So that's what's going on here. You can think of this as water out here, and any place you got a hole, it's going to fill that in, right? Or you can picture it as a vacuum sweeper, and she's just going to suck stuff in from outside. Either way is correct to a certain extent. It doesn't matter. However we can wrap our heads around this, we're coming with the same. We're coming with the same physics is going to happen with the air. So it's come up. This is sealed. Now we're starting to pull in a little bit of air. And we also we closed this off, so now this side of the piston's sealed, right as we're going up. So now we're compression. That's where our compression comes in. So we go on up, and the whole time we're going up, this piston is creating a bigger and bigger void under it, right? While that piston's going up, it's losing, or it's creating a void where it was, which is creating more suction, more vacuum, or less pressure than out here, a greater pressure differential. So stuff's rushing in there and trying to equalize that pressure differential. Now, it will try to equal that, and given enough time, it would equal. As fast as these go, I suspicion that this never gets up to 0 psig. That's just my suspicion. Because it would slow down to such a trickle, it'd be the law of diminishing returns. It's going to quit filling that before you ever make it up to atmospheric pressure. But so we come on up. It got up to there. Pow! She fired. Drives the piston back down. Right? Okay. We haven't talked about transfers yet, and that's okay. Now we're going to drive the piston back down. Now you can see how the roof can, or how the intake can spit back if you got it wrong. So we was below 0 psig, we'll say, when we was at the top, wasn't we? So we're coming back down, and this is where porting's going to come in. You want this closed before you get above 0 psig, right? Because you don't want it spitting back. But it may be, and you'll get spit back. So we're trying to avoid the spit back, and you do that different ways. But I'm going to get off into the weeds. I better quit with that. But you can wrap your head around that. Right now, as this bottom of this intake closes, this piston's still coming down. Now this here, like I say, this piston's never going to block the bottom of this. So the only place that has to go, now we're starting to compress this. And we'll say we're above atmospheric pressure out here right now. We're at bottom dead. We're not quite the bottom dead center, but we'll say we're above atmospheric pressure right here, right now, right? Because we was a little below atmospheric pressure up here, but by the time we diminished our volumes down here, now we're going to say we're above atmospheric pressure by +5. Okay, so we're building pressure here and this whole channel of this transfer, because it's all tied together. If there's pressure here, there's pressure right here. Now, I would venture to say that the pressure's not all equal. It's happening too fast. We got inertia in the air, and I'd say the pressure's less here than here, but that's okay. We'll get into that after a while too. But anyhow, suffice it to say, we're building pressure, and she's trying to squeeze. She's just squeezing this all the same pressure. We'll say we're imperfect, and we've got exactly the same pressure right there, right? Well, as that piston continues to come down to right about there, now all of a sudden, got my piston hung up, hung a ring. As soon as that piston breaks right here, or is right here, we're at maximum pressure we're ever going to have right here in this cylinder, right? But we're not to bottom dead center yet. So this piston's going to come on down, and what that did is that just opened up this transfer port into this cylinder, right? You can see how it's no longer blocking this transfer port. So we take this pressure and put it up here. Okay, that's where your exhaust is going to become important, but it's putting it in and it's squirting towards this side. We're trying to fill this whole chamber right here. We've still got burnt exhaust gases out here fighting us a little bit, and that's okay. So we got plumb all the way down, and now we're coming back up, and it closes that transfer port off, and we go on up, and the cycle starts all over again. That's how the fuel makes it from the carburetor up on top of the piston, by this little channel here. I had a guy that didn't understand that the other day, and when I explained that, the light come on. So where does that leave us with strato saw? How does a strato saw work? Now, this is a very poor representation of a strato carb. And I may just if you've seen this, okay, I dug out a strato carb. It's off a 362 steel. Doesn't matter necessarily what it was off of. But there's the part that bolts against the engine right here. And this is the fresh air butterfly. And you can see it opens with the fuel butterfly, fuel fed one. And you can see on these Strato saws, they make that fuel fed just as small as can be. That's a little bitty. Let me get that's a 360. This is a 362 carburetor. Here's a 440 carburetor, also work all the way down to a steel 029, I think. Now it's just got one hole, but it all gets fuel in this and here. You can see how much fuel they've got restricted down on them. Now I'd say they pour the fuel to them hard, but that's my car. This is my emulation. This is my emulation of this carburetor right here. We're going to run fuel air in this side and just air in this side. And here's my piston. And this here is representing this cutout in this piston right here, okay? Now, how this is going to work is almost identical, right? We're going to start back up here at top dead center. Yeah, we'll just start with our intake closed. No, we're not. So we're going to start with our engine at bottom dead center again. Just even with it, mine just happens to be even with the bottom of the exhaust. So it's going to come up again. We're going to draw a vacuum, right? We was at 0 atmospheric pressure. Now we're going to say we're at -5. And this has begun to come important here. We're not open to anything yet. There's the port on that piston. It's not lined up with that, and the skirt's closing this. So we're at a perfect seal, we're going to say. And we've got us a vacuum drew in here, right? Now, a while ago when I mentioned that there might be a pressure differential even between the top of this transfer, because they're just little bitty, they're restricted as heck. So all the way at the top of this transfer, we may not have as much negative pressure or vacuum as we have down here. It hadn't made it all the way up there yet, right? So it hasn't pulled a vacuum as much all the way up here at the speed we're running. So, but we're going to claim we're at a negative pressure all the way around in here, and there may be negative pressure, less negative pressure up there in the corner. So this piston is going up. Now, like on this Husky, the stratified port, the layering port, it opens at the same time the skirt opens. So we had a vacuum in here, right? It gets pulled into this bottom case by two different directions. It gets pulled in through the top of the transfer. Nothing's open to the engine yet. The only thing that's under a vacuum is this whole bottom of this case and this whole transfer right here. So this fresh air actually goes backwards into that transfer, backwards of where we're going to want it after a bit. And then the fuel air is coming down and filling this here, which is kind of what I got illustrated here in just a minute. But as that keeps coming up and we're pulling vacuum and making compression on top, and we're still pulling vacuum on the bottom because we're creating a bigger void, and we're still just barely lined up there, we'll claim, and still barely lined up, or not closed there. So we're still feeding this transfer from the top and feeding this case from the bottom and feeding this transfer from the bottom. It's feeding it from both directions. That's where the Strato is going to come in, and it's going to layer that. Now, we're going to come back down, and we're going to be under compression. We're going to come back. We fired, pow. Now the piston's coming back down. Now we're going to close off this intake, and we're going to close off Strato at the same time. And I'm going to get off in the weeds about that for a minute too, and we'll touch back on it. But that's where you can change how your Stratos are firing by, if you just lower your intake port on a Strato saw, you may be getting stuff way out of balance. So you need to be aware of that because you just changed how it is. And it might change it for the better, but you need to be aware of that. So this piston comes down. We're under compression here. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I shouldn't have stopped in there and looked at you guys. Sorry about that. We're building pistons coming down, and we're building compression, right? And we're building. We're building compression or pressure. We're building pressure from here all the way down. Our exhaust started leaving, so our pressure's dropping up here. We had it fired. Piston come down, made power to here. As soon as this cracks open, we start getting rid of exhaust. Exhaust pressure's coming down, and exhaust pressure is getting close to nothing. Now, right here, we're just going to stop this engine right here, right mid-running. We're at 13,000 RPMs, and we're going to freeze it there just a second. Now, this pressure down here is above 0 PSIG. We're under pressure here, and we're probably still above right here because we haven't got rid of all our exhaust yet, right? But let's say we hope this is at 7 PSIG, and maybe this is at 5 PSIG because we're almost all the way out. And that's where your transfer timing will get in. That's where your exhaust port shape will get in. You want this pressure down, right? You don't want too much pressure. PSI differential, we're hunting for better PSI differential between here and here. That's what some of our porting will get us. We're gonna increase that differential. The bigger differential we have, the less restricted we are to get fuel up top, right? That's where our exhaust will come in. And exhaust port shape and mufflers and the whole mess. But we're coming down now. Right here, this no, we're not ready to open that yet. I want to talk about this. Here's where the saw, in my opinion, gets the name Strato from, because when we filled that down here, we put fresh air in the top and fuel air in the bottom, and at some point in there, they're layered. Now, let's face it, they're getting mixed up in there a little bit right in here probably. But that's where the Strato saw gets its name from. The fact that this charge is stratified or layered, clean air over fuel air. So we're coming down, and now we've about expelled all our exhaust. We've got our transfers open, and the first puff of air that comes out of there, first shot that comes out of there, is right up over the top of the piston, but it's clean air. There's this much clean air, and it comes out here, it's under pressure, so it fills this void up, it blossoms out, it gets to expand again, and hopefully push this exhaust out, right? Well, and it's probably creating a turbulence, but then right after that comes our fuel air mixture. We're under pressure, we're down to bottom dead center now, getting ready to come back up, but we're still under pressure, so this whole fuel air charge, as much of it as we can, went up to there until these two pressures equalize. 0 PSID in a perfect world. This pressure is same as that pressure, so we've got just as much. So it always leaves a little pressure down here, always leaves a little pressure up there. We're just hunting for pressure differential. So when it gets to the bottom, it squirted all this fuel air up, and it's got inertia, so it's running up in there. And theoretically, it can pull a little bit of vacuum behind it. If it's got a good enough run, it can pull a siphon of this behind it. But that's porting theory, not stratified theory, that I want to talk to you guys about. So the piston's going to go back up, and we're going to start all over again. Now, there's a couple thinkings here. Number one, I made that block, and there's a spare one. I made that block the other day. Spare one, hell, I'll get out the real one. It ain't gonna fit. But see, there's my two Strato ports, and there's my fuel port, right? Well, those are all tied together. They're not blocking each other off. What we are is we're feeding those with a 357 carburetor, and that video's coming up, and that video will be coming up, and I don't want a spoiler alert with it. I showed building this block in the last video, the machine work and all that. This video is coming up. This saw's already been ran with this. Carburetor linkage, I'll tell you that, spoiler. We got it run. We got proof of concept. We got dyno runs. We got fuel consumption runs, things like that. And that video will be upcoming. I wanted to drop this one in between. So, yeah, if I'm wearing short sleeves and stuff, and the other one, don't pay no attention. I did this a month or two back. Just got it edited and gonna get it released. So, we're actually, let's go back down here. So what my theory was on this is I've got my fuel air here and I've got my strato up here. So instead of running clean air up here and fuel down here, I made it so we're still feeding the transfers from both directions, right? Kind of the best of both worlds. Remember earlier I said we're pulling a vacuum up until everything opens. Let me get my hand out of the way. We're pulling a vacuum. We're on our way up. So we've got the biggest vacuum. We created a void. We got the biggest vacuum down here and up this transfer, but fluid dynamics tells me that there's probably less of a vacuum up here than there is down here. Matter of fact, it may be trying to reverse this a little bit, but it takes, air has mass. So in order to get this air reversed and come down here to get as much of a vacuum, it has to overcome that mass. So it tells me there's less of a vacuum up here, but there still is some. So, and the same way with when you're compression. Now I'm going to follow that thought. I'm going to sidetrack. Same way when you're compressing this bottom end, this air fuel mixture still has mass. So we're under pressure here, but we're probably under less pressure here than we were down here because of the reversion. Again, we got to revert and go back the other way. And it's kind of like everybody's taking off stair-stepping, or everybody taking off from a stop sign at the same time. The first guy gets out there, and then the second guy is farther behind, the third guy is farther behind, and pretty soon the fifth guy doesn't even make it through the stoplight. There was room if they'd all moved at once, but it's not. If it was fluid, it wouldn't compress. So theoretically, this end would move at the same speed as that end. But this is air, so we'll have a compression. We'll have a higher compression in here than we will up here. So that leads into part of my theory on fueling that upper transfer. If I can fuel that from both ways, we had less of a compression, or less of a vacuum. It probably didn't fill that as fast, but it filled it some, and it filled it now with fuel air. Okay, this is fuel air in here now instead of fresh air. Now, you think, and this old air. Now, previous on the Strato, we were supposed to chase our exhaust out. We were supposed to chase our exhaust out with fresh air, right? And then when this piston closes, we don't even care about that fresh air. There's no reversion. We don't care if we get any bounce back of that. That fresh air is out there. It's being wasteful. Theoretically, we've cleaned up our emissions, right? We didn't put any more fuel and hydrocarbons and stuff out into the air. I probably used the wrong word there, but you know what I'm saying. We didn't pollute the air as bad. Okay. Now with my way of fueling the upper transfers, you'd say, well, we got fuel air out here that we're wasting. And that may be the case, okay? But it also may not be the case. And the reason I say that, looking at the wash pattern on top of my piston, and this one didn't much count. It's been scrubbed on and bad shape. Exhaust sides over here. And I've scrubbed a lot of that off. But honestly, it didn't look like, it looked like I had fuel air back here. But it looked like actually we still had straight air over here, no fuel. So with transfer timing, I should be able, and aiming, we're back to our regular two-stroke non-stratified stuff now. You're aiming at trying to get as much of that in there and then the exhaust comes back, you reuse the reversion and shove a little bit of this back in and actually hopefully get this above 14.7 before we ever start making compression, right? If this is above 14.7, essentially it's supercharged. And it can be supercharged with a good tuned exhaust, using inertia, using timing numbers. Just a degree or two will make a big difference. But I hope guys, I know I used a lot of wrong terminology here. I don't want to toot my own horn, but believe it or not, I can explain radar to a third grader. Now, you take somebody that's real smart or thinks they're real smart and they'll use big words and baffle people. I take pride in being able to understand something well enough to try to use small words, and sometimes I'll use the wrong word just to make a point. Yeah, I can explain radar to a third grader and they can understand it, because I understand it, and therefore I can talk to them in the language that they understand, and it'll click onto them. They're like, okay, now I know how it works. That's pretty cool. I'm not trying to talk down to you guys, but there's a lot of people that don't understand this. And maybe I'm left-handed, so right brain, maybe I think of things different. But guys, I don't know. I'll get inside and edit this, hopefully get it released. Hopefully it'll make some sense. I'll try to arrange it where it'll make some sense. If I earned it, give her the old hitchhiker. If I didn't, give her the old Julius Caesar. From here on out, we'll never talk about me having enough sense to come in out of the rain. That's over. That's behind us. This was just an alternative me. The real me's just dumber than crap. So appreciate it. Back at it, and I'll get the results on them other chainsaw mods as we can. Dang, I'm just sitting there looking at the camera. You can see gaps in the wall behind me of snow. That's how airtight my shed is. She's the same wind chill in the shed as it is outside. Oh, crud, snow on the floor. Oh, man, it's nice. But I'm going to get in there and see what I can do and see about getting us a video made. Appreciate her, guys.